Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to be honest with you. When I first saw the topic for today, I had a very visceral reaction.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't excitement. It was more of a flinch.
A flinch, that's a strong
It
start.
was. Because we were talking about the inner child. And I think for a lot of people, myself included, that phrase instantly conjures up this very specific kind of cringy image.
I know the one.
Sitting in a circle somewhere, hugging a pillow, maybe hitting a mattress with a foam bat, crying about some bicycle you didn't get when you were 7. It just feels soft. It
Right.
feels like something you're supposed to do when you're, broken, not when you're trying to be a high-functioning adult.
That is the exact cultural baggage we need to unpack today, because you are so right. That is the prevailing narrative.
It is.
We've been conditioned to see the inner child almost exclusively through the lens of trauma. We see it as this wound that needs to be fixed, or worse, some humiliating phase that we should have outgrown by now.
Exactly. The assumption is just, I am an adult, I have a mortgage, I have a LinkedIn profile, the child part of me is gone, or at least it should be.
But the source material we're looking at for this deep dive, it flips that script completely. And honestly, it's one of the most intellectually robust takes I've seen on this.
Yeah.
The core argument is that the inner child isn't a wound. It's not a fragment of your past. It is your original self.
The original self. I like that branding a lot better.
It changes the stakes, doesn't it? The source defines this original self as the consciousness you had before all the conditioning took over.
Before you learn to be polite.
Before you learn to be afraid of judgment, before you learn to perform for approval. So the shift we're making isn't how do I fix this broken child? It's how do I stop burying the person I actually am?
Which implies that what we call growing up might actually just be a really sophisticated burial process.
In many cases, yeah. The source uses a phrase that I know caught your attention: sophisticated self-suppression.
Yeah, that hit me like a ton of bricks. Sophisticated self-suppression.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of us, especially high achievers, we look at our lives, our schedules, our emotional control, our ability to just suck it up, and we call that maturity.
We do.
But the source is arguing that a lot of that is just us being really, really good at suppressing our actual vitality.
Precisely. And the cost of that suppression isn't just that you feel a little down. It's neurological. It affects how your brain processes reality.
Wow.
But before we get into the brain science, let's just dig into what this original self even looks like. Because if it's not a crying toddler, what is it?
Right. So the source describes the original self as having a few specific factory settings.
Yeah.
It's curious, perceptive, emotionally honest, imaginative, and intrinsically connected to meaning.
Think about that list for a second. Curiosity, perception, emotional honesty. These aren't childish traits in a bad way.
No.
These are the raw materials of being alive. A child experiences reality directly. If they touch something hot, they pull away. If they see something funny, they laugh. They haven't learned to filter their experience through a layer of ideology yet.
They haven't learned to read the room and decide if laughing is appropriate for their personal brand.
Exactly. They haven't split themselves in half to survive social expectations. But, and this is so crucial, we do have to survive. We do have to live in a society. And that's where the adult ego comes in.
Now, usually in these conversations, the ego is the villain. It's the thing we're supposed to kill or transcend.
Yeah.
But the source takes a more pragmatic view here.
It does.
Yeah.
The source defines the adult ego as a survival structure. Think of it like a spacesuit.
Okay.
If you're going to walk around on planet Earth with all these other humans, you need a suit. You need to be safe, predictable, acceptable.
You need to know how to wait in line at the grocery store.
And how not to say everything you're thinking to your boss.
So the ego is the safety manager.
That's a perfect analogy. The ego is the safety manager. Its entire job is risk mitigation. It wants to make sure you get fed, you get paid, and you don't get exiled from the tribe. And that is a vital job. We need it.
The problem arises when the safety manager stages a hostile takeover and locks the CEO out of the building.
Exactly. The problem isn't that we have an ego. The problem is that we confuse the survival structure for the self. We think the spacesuit is the person.
Right.
And that brings us right back to sophisticated self-suppression. The source argues that what we culturally celebrate as maturity is often just a collection of suppression tactics, all designed to keep the safety manager happy.
Let's walk through these because when I read this list, I felt personally attacked.
I think we all do a little.
The first one is delaying truth to keep approval.
This is the classic people pleaser trap, but it's deeper than that, It's that instinct to scan the room to see what everyone else wants to hear before you even check in with what you want to say.
You just disconnect from your own intuition to ensure social safety.
And then you wonder why you feel invisible. It's because you erased yourself before anyone else had the chance.
Wow. Okay, the second one. Replacing curiosity with certainty.
This is such a tragedy of adulthood. We stop asking why and what if, and we start clinging to this is how it is.
Yeah.
Because certainty feels safe, it's efficient. Curiosity is messy. It leads you down paths you can't control, so the safety manager shuts it down.
The third one is the one that I think just dominates the corporate world. Replacing play with productivity.
Oh, absolutely. We see play as a waste of time. If it doesn't have an ROI, if it's not on the resume, if it doesn't clean the house, we don't do it.
Right.
But the source argues that play is the native language of the original self. It's how we process reality and find new solutions. When you kill play, you kill the spark.
And the last one, which I think is maybe the most damaging, replacing feeling with control.
Let's pause on this one. Replacing feeling with control. What does that actually look like?
I picture the person who's just incredibly calm in a crisis,
Yeah.
but not because they're grounded, because they're numb.
Yes.
You know that person. They sit in a meeting, they hear something infuriating, and instead of feeling that anger and using it to set a boundary, they just turn off the receiver, they smile, they nod, they manage the situation.
Right. They treat their own emotions like an inconvenience to be eliminated. And on the surface, that looks like professionalism.
It looks like being a grown-up.
But internally, it's a dead zone. You've evicted the part of you that actually feels alive. You've built this very safe, very predictable life, but there's no one home to enjoy it.
You've built a cage and called it a castle.
That is a haunting way to put it. And this isn't just poetry. This is where the source material gets really fascinating for me because it connects this suppression directly to neurology.
Yeah, let's get into the science of this, because it's easy to dismiss inner child talk as just, fluff. But the source says this is about brain structure.
It is. So the source draws a correspondence between these concepts and the brain's architecture. Roughly speaking, the inner child corresponds to the limbic system.
Which is the emotional brain.
Yes. The limbic system is that evolutionarily older part of the brain. It's responsible for emotional attunement, bonding, motivation, that sense of aliveness. It's your gut feelings. It's the engine of vitality.
And the adult.
The adult corresponds to the prefrontal cortex, the newest part of the brain right behind your forehead. It's for regulation, structure, timing, logic, predicting consequences.
Okay, so if the limbic system is the engine, the prefrontal cortex is the steering wheel and the brakes.
Perfect analogy. Now, think about what happens in sophisticated self-suppression. The prefrontal cortex, the adult, decides the limbic system, the child, is too messy, too loud, too risky.
So it clamps down.
It clamps down. It applies the brakes permanently.
And that's what we call being professional.
Right. But what happens to a car engine when you rev it while you're standing on the brakes?
It burns out.
It burns out. The nervous system dysregulates. The source explains that when you suppress the child parts, the curiosity, the play, the emotion, your body interprets that as a threat.
A threat.
Yeah. If you aren't playing, if you aren't connecting, you must be in danger. So the system shifts into defense modes: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Wait, so my burnout might not just be that I have too many emails. It could be that my prefrontal cortex is working overtime to strangle my limbic system.
That is a very distinct possibility. You are exhausting yourself by fighting your own vitality.
Wow.
True integration, what the source calls neurological coherence, isn't about the adult silencing the child. It's about synergy. The prefrontal cortex provides regulation while the limbic system provides vitality.
Regulation plus vitality equals presence.
Yes. Highly integrated people, and we all know a few, they often seem oddly youthful, don't they?
They do.
Not immature, but they have a spark. Their eyes are bright, they're quick to laugh. That's because their limbic system is online. They're alive.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here. I can hear a listener screaming at their phone right now.
Go for it.
They're saying, that sounds great, but I know people who have their limbic system online, and they are a nightmare. They're impulsive, they throw tantrums, they spend the rent money on concert tickets. Does letting the inner child out just mean we get to act like toddlers?
This is the critical distinction, and the source is very, very clear on this. There is a massive difference between integration and immaturity.
Okay, so how do we tell them apart?
The source defines immaturity as child energy without adult containment.
Child energy without adult containment. So that's the engine running with no steering wheel.
Exactly. That is lower integration, And the source describes two versions of this. Scenario A is what you just described. The child runs the system unchecked, impulsivity, entitlement, avoidance.
Right.
This is the person who can't handle discomfort, so they lash out or check out. That's not an integrated inner child. That's just a chaotic nervous system.
And scenario B.
Scenario B is the strict father model we were talking about. The child is exiled completely. Numbness, rigidity, just performative adulthood.
So both the person throwing a tantrum at the airport and the person who is completely stone-faced and dead inside are actually suffering from the same problem.
Yes. They are both unintegrated. One has no brakes, the other has no engine.
That is a light bulb moment. So if those are the failure modes, what does higher integration actually look like? What's the goal here?
Higher integration is when the child is embodied and held. The child, the vitality, the emotion, the intuition, is fully present, but the adult self provides the structure and the safety for that expression.
The source gave some pairings here that I thought were incredibly helpful for picturing this. It says we're looking for emotional clarity without emotional flooding.
Right. Lower integration is flooding. You just drown in the feeling. Higher integration is clarity. You can feel the sadness, acknowledge it, learn from it, but you don't let it drive the car into a ditch.
Playfulness without irresponsibility.
Yes. The person who can be goofy and creative in the brainstorm, but who also makes sure the project gets submitted on time.
Wonder without naivete. And this last one, my favorite. Honesty without cruelty.
That is the ultimate test. Children are honest, but they can be cruel because they don't have context or empathy yet. Mommy, why is that man so fat?
Right. Child honesty.
An integrated adult still has that commitment to truth. They don't lie to be polite, but they deliver that truth with the wisdom and care of the prefrontal cortex.
I really like the concrete examples the source used to contrast these states. It said, a tantrum is not the inner child. A laugh from the belly is.
And running from responsibility is not the inner child. Choosing joy within responsibility is.
Can we dig into that? Choosing joy within responsibility. Because I think people hear inner child and they think, quit your job and move to a treehouse.
Right. That's the escapist fantasy. Integration is harder, but it's way more rewarding. It's staying in the job, but changing how you show up. It's bringing your curiosity to that boring meeting. It's finding a way to be playful with a difficult problem. You aren't running away from the adult world. You are bringing the aliveness of the child into the adult world.
You're re-inhabiting the castle.
Exactly.
This leads us to the section of the source material that really blew my mind. The paradox of power.
It's such a profound observation. The source notes that the most stable, wise, and grounded individuals are often those with the most accessible inner child.
Which feels completely backward. We're taught that power looks like stoicism. It looks like the Godfather, unreadable, cold.
But ask yourself, why does someone need to be unreadable and cold? It's usually a defense mechanism. They're posturing.
They're afraid.
They're terrified that if they show a crack, they'll be exploited. Their sense of safety is built externally, through dominance, through status, through rigid control.
This is the spacesuit again. They built a tank.
Right. But the integrated person, their sense of self is internally sourced. They don't need to posture because they aren't fragmented. They have access to their own intuition. They aren't wasting half their energy just suppressing their own nervous system.
The source uses the phrase soft and unshakable.
Soft and unshakable. Think about that person who can sit with you while you're grieving and just be present. They don't try to fix it. That's adult control. And they don't fall apart. That's child flooding. They're just there. That is a massive power.
It also mentions that these people rest without guilt. That one stings a little.
It's a huge indicator. If you can't rest, it's usually because your ego is screaming that you are only valuable when you are producing.
Yeah.
The safety manager is terrified that if you stop working, you'll die. The inner child knows that you are valuable just because you exist. When you integrate that, you can actually rest.
So the false self matures by accumulation, getting more status, more money, more armor.
And the true self matures by integration, by bringing all the exiled parts of yourself back home, realizing you don't need to kill the child to be the adult.
Really reframes the whole aging process. I think a lot of us fear aging because we think it just means becoming more rigid, more tired, more done. But this suggests that true maturity is actually about becoming more whole.
Yes. The source ends with a really powerful distinction on this. It says, you do not grow out of the inner child. You grow into protecting it.
You grow into protecting it. That completely changes the job description of adulthood.
It does. Your job isn't to suppress the child. It's to build a safe container so the child can thrive. You use your adult skills, your discipline, your foresight, your boundaries to protect your curiosity, your joy, your capacity to love.
So instead of the safety manager locking the CEO in the basement, the safety manager is finally doing their real job, creating a safe environment for the CEO to do the visionary work.
That's it. And when that happens, life shifts. The source says life stops being something you manage and becomes something you participate in.
I love that. Moving from management to participation. Because I think we all know what managing a life feels like. It feels like a chore.
A series of problems to be solved.
Yes, but participating. That's immersive. That's sensory. That's being willing to be surprised. That is the gift the inner child brings back to us.
It is.
So for everyone listening, I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge for the week. And it's not to go buy a coloring book, unless you really want to.
Please, no performative coloring.
Right. The challenge is to just look at where you are managing your life a little too tightly. Where are you replacing curiosity with certainty? Where have you decided, I know how this meeting is going to go, instead of asking, I wonder what's possible here?
And where are you replacing feeling with control? If you feel a flash of anger or sadness or even sudden joy this week, try not to just shove it down instantly. Just notice it. See if you can let the adult hold space for it rather than just extinguishing it.
Try to drive the car with the engine and the brakes.
It's a much smoother ride.
This has been such a necessary conversation. I feel like I can take a deep breath for the first time in a while.
That's the feeling of the armor coming off just a little bit.
I'll take it. Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.
Take care.